Today we have a unique opportunity to visit the American Daffodil Society's National Convention and show here in Nashville. This is the first time the show's been held here, so we're really excited to show you all of the flowers that have come from actually all over the world to be presented here today. Neil, what brought you to the U.S. for a daffodil show?
I think probably the first time. I was slightly reluctant. I'd never been to America before, so I was a slightly nervous step there. But that's back in '99. I came to Pittsburgh to an American Daffodil Society convention. I suppose I fell in love with America, and I fell in love with the American daffodil people. It's a wonderful family, and yeah, it's good fun.
Okay, well, so when you prepare to bring your flowers from Northern Ireland all the way to America, what's your process? How do you go about getting your flowers over here?
Well, I suppose the first thing, probably the most important, particularly as far as the US is concerned, is that we're inspected by our Department of Agriculture. After we've cut the flowers and bring them in, we personally make sure there's absolutely no bugs or anything on it. Then our inspector comes and looks at them. Once he okays them and gives us the documentation to bring them in, we then start to pack them. We pack them dry and we pack them flat in a box and pinned to the bottom of the box. The box has to be aluminium, because if you have a wooden box you need a certificate for that as well. So,
right.
We use a metal box and they're pinned tight into that, closed up and brought off in the hold of the plane.
So they actually do go in the belly of the plane,
inside
of a box, and
absolutely
shipped over here without any water.
No water.
No water at all.
As dry as possible. If there's dampness in it at all,
begin to rot.
They can start to rot. Yes, which is the problem.
Very resilient, very tough flowers, both in the garden and for your purposes.
And particularly modern ones, as a cut flower, can last quite a long time in the house. Obviously, you have high central heating; it's going to be not so long, but you should be able to get 2-3 weeks out of a flower in cool conditions. I am primarily a hybridizer.
Okay.
So everything that I've got here now is of my own breeding.
Of your own breeding.
Yeah, and
do you have a particular focus?
Health. Probably mainly.
Okay.
And also smaller ones. People's gardens are getting smaller.
Right.
Sorry, yards you say, but because of that, I'm trying to shrink the flowers and shrink the plant.
And shrink the plant.
Yeah, so that you can have a nice clump of daffodils in your garden, which you can put more than one variety. Some of the older varieties are very big.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's quite difficult to do it because of the genetics of the daffodil. It's quite hard to shrink the plant as well as the flower.
So if you shrink the plant then for these smaller gardens, that means that the foliage as it dries and decays is smaller as well, and you don't end up with that big clump of leaves in the garden taking up space for many weeks.
But there's a way around that as well, because when I do my talks, I tell people, this is the argument everyone has, and I don't know about America, but the old thing used to be to tie them in little knots.
Right.
Worst thing you can do.
Worst possible thing you can do.
Waste your time and damages the plant.
Right.
So what I say is plant them in your borders with a perennial in front.
Right.
So as the daffodils are dying down, the perennial's coming up in front of. I'm a lazy gardener. Forget your dead leaves.
Right.
Rake them up the rest of the time when you're raking up all the dead perennial leaves as well, rather than spend hours and hours tidying your garden.
Sure. I completely agree. This booklet, all 40, 50 pages of it, are the different divisions of flowers that could be entered in the show here today. So Class G5 is a collection of flowers. So flowers can be exhibited as individuals or collections. So there are many different divisions that can be entered in, including flower arranging, photography, and this is what a flower show looks like. I've been fortunate enough to attend flower shows all over the world, England, France, and we have them right here in America too, and this is a great example of one. Well, for having crossed the Atlantic, these flowers look beautiful. So tell me about the process now, getting them ready to exhibit.
Right. These were out of water for about 36 to 48 hours, something like that. So the first thing I do when I get home is get into the hotel, cut the base off, stick them in water, and they quickly revive.
Let them drink.
Let them drink. Overnight, they turn fairly fresh. A lot of these were picked in bud, simply because it was a very late season and they've opened quicker than they should, so they're a bit rough. But as I was saying earlier about shrinking flowers, that's what I would call a standard daffodil.
Right.
And there's one I shrunk. So you see the two together, they're very different.
So almost a perfect little double.
A little double.
In almost miniature form.
Absolutely. But it's, unfortunately, so far, this one, the plant isn't as small as I would like, but it is smaller. So what we're basically trying to do is impress the judges.
Right.
I mean, there are many ways of doing that. Buying them a bottle of whiskey isn't the only one. But what we do is we just gently dress it, and what we're looking for is perfect symmetry. This double is not actually a good one to show it on, but if I hold this one up, you're basically in a show flower, you're looking for a line from the point of that petal through the stigma, which is
in the center of the flower,
down to the bottom of that, and it should be, if you folded that over, it should perfectly meet on top of the other one.
Fold in half.
Absolutely. So that's what you're looking for in a show flower. Obviously a garden flower, you're looking for something spectacular in the way of color, which might be something like this, which I suppose for Nashville is a good one. It's called Rock and Goose. And it's got fairly dramatic color and obviously would show up well in the garden.
Yeah, that really brilliant orange.
We also want a fairly round cup, so we fiddle around with it.
Right.
There's lots of tricks to the trade.
Sure.
And then we have double daffodils.
Yeah.
Which we saw the miniature. That's a larger one. And again, you're looking for symmetry. So basically everything is symmetry. And in breeding, we're looking for, particularly in a double, strong stems.
Strong stems that will hold those heads up.
Absolutely. Otherwise, well, they're like a sponge. They fill with water and just head down into the dirt.
I know I have a few in the garden that got rained on the other night, and they're face down. So Mike, you and your wife actually were the co-chairs of this entire convention.
Yes.
And the flower show portion of it is just one piece.
Right.
So there's education going on and all different kinds of things this weekend.
Right.
But I want to talk to you specifically about the flower show and this judging process that you go through.
At a daffodil show, you have single stems, which are on the back wall over here, vases of 3, so similarity of the flowers is important, and collections of 5 and upwards. So the collections of 5 are on that table there. They have a common theme, same division, same country of origin, same color. These are even bigger collections. So these are 12, 15, there's one over there that's 36.
Sure.
And the idea behind these is they also have a common theme, but a lot more challenging because each of these individual flowers has to be blue ribbon quality.
Right.
So if there's one second place flower in this whole thing,
then it's not going to qualify for first place.
Right. So let's see. So in terms of what kind of flower we're looking at here, this is our temple, and you can see the rim there is really nicely formed. Some of these orange rims, if they're out in the sun too much, will burn.
Right.
So you can see that the petals are really flat. For them to be bent back a little bit is okay.
Right.
So that's a really good flower. Right next to it is a flower called New Penny, and that's a really good show flower also. Both of these are Division 3 flowers. They have flat cups.
Right.
This is a 1, and it's a trumpet, so it has a longer cup. And then next to it is a 2 that kind of has a medium-sized cup.
And our cool and overcast weather this spring has been kind to the flowers.
So the colors you can see are really vibrant. You can look at that one. It's like that's red.
Right.
You don't see red every year in the
Get
garden,
into those reds and pink colors. The cooler weather
here,
intensifies them.
Here's a good example. That one's Sugar Rose. That's a beautiful flower. And you can see how that cup starts white and just fades very gradually out to pink.
Well, thank you so much for giving us a little insight into the judging process.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So a few tips for growing any kind of bulbs really successfully in Tennessee. Most of them need good drainage. Daffodils are no exception. They do like well-drained soil. They'll do better if you mix maybe even a little gravel or something into the bottom of the planting hole so that the bottom of the bulb is not sitting on wet clay all winter long. They want to be primarily in full sun, but the nice thing is, especially with spring flowering bulbs, they come up early in the season, so you can use them in shadier parts of the garden, especially where you have deciduous trees, because the sun is streaming down through the branches early in the spring when the daffodils are coming up. You want to feed them once or twice a year. I feed mine in my garden just as the foliage begins to emerge, just as they push through the soil in the spring, and again late in the fall as they're forming roots underground. I find that's an important time to feed them also. It's been a real honor to be here at the American Daffodil Society show in Music City. As you can see, daffodils don't just come in yellow. They come in a wide variety of shapes, colors, and forms, and so many of them will grow well for us here in Tennessee.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.